Welcome to another episode of Systematic Geekology. This is a space where we seek to create and cultivate healthy conversations between those things we geek out on and the philosophical and theological questions that often arise out of our fandoms. Like, what does it mean to be human? What makes a hero? What makes a villain? How do the stories and narratives we geek out on shape how we live in the world? We are your priest to the geeks. We aren't all ordained, but we see ourselves as mediators at the intersection of geek culture and going deeper in our faith. We don't always have to agree, but we do respect each other, and we see everyone as a beloved child of God. Everyone geeks out on something, so come geek out with us and enjoy the show.
You're listening to an Anazal Ministries podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, parrots, street rats, and genies of all ages, we welcome you all to the wonderful world of Walt Disney's Animation Studios, today discussing Aladdin, The Return of Jafar, the first direct-to, not DVD, because that didn't exist yet, direct-to-video release of the 90s. We are Systematic Geekology. We are the Priest of the Geeks. I'm your host, Christian Ashley, joined by two of my wonderful co-hosts. You know her, you love her, Barbara Erdely. How's it going, Barbara?
It's going pretty good.
Excellent. Glad to hear it. Even with John in your life, things are going well?
For the most part, yeah. We just started homeschooling, so today was a trial.
Ah, how'd Joseph take it?
He actually did pretty well. He got bored about halfway through, so we broke for lunch, and then now he's back at it, so he's good.
Good. Glad to hear that. But we're also joined by another host, Elizabeth Pangalangan Clyde, the co-leader of the rebellion against Joshua Knoll. How's it going, Pang?
Pretty good. I mean, I did wake up and chose violence today, so there's just your fair warning.
Oh.
I mean, so did I. It's okay.
Yes. I think we've
It's
all
been one of those
had a rough
days.
day today. So let's talk about this goofy movie, but not the goofy movie. That's another episode we'll be doing along the way. But we're also not alone. We have a special, guest here. You've heard him before. You may even like him. Joe Dea, how's it going, Joe?
What's up, you geeks? It is good to be back on the show.
Excellent. And Joshua said, hey, see if Joe wants to go on the show. He loves Aladdin. I was like, yeah, sure. I'll talk to Joe. And here we are now. So, guys, what have you been geeking out on? Pang, you go ahead first.
I have to open my Crunchyroll and see. That's such a short attention span.
It's okay. You know what?
So
I'll give you time.
The next.
Yeah. I'll go first then to give you time. I recently have been listening to the Art Bell podcast, which is replays of his original radio show he used to do that I never listened to back in the day because I didn't know they existed. And so this is my introduction to him. I enjoy them. I think his greatest strength is also his greatest weakness, and that he just lets people talk. So that's fun. Joe, how
That
about
is
you?
a fair assessment of Art Bell. Yeah. I have been going back through, Mrs. Bearded Geek and I have been going through and rewatching IT Crowd. It has been a hot minute since I've seen it, and it is just so fascinating what the British can get away with that American TV just simply cannot. I'll just leave it there.
Mm-hmm.
Have you tried turning it on and off again?
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Had to ask.
Was that mean you're ready, Pang? Or do we have
Yeah,
to
I'm
save
ready.
you for last? Okay.
I don't know why I just forget what I watched yesterday, but it happened. So I just finished Arte, which is on Crunchyroll, and it's about this female artist back in like the
Renaissance.
not the Renaissance. but kind of like, Galileo and all that stuff, like kind of like in anime form. And so she
Renaissance.
is
The Renaissance, yeah.
yeah, but I mean, like, I think Renaissance as like the carnival type deal. So she's a noble person. So leave me alone.
Nobles went to the
Anyway.
carnival.
I don't care, guys, okay? And let me finish my story. Anyway, she's a noble. She wants to be a painter, but that's a man's world. And so it's all about her being a painter. Yay.
Excellent. And for pain's sake, I will not share my review of the show. Barbara, round us out.
So we just wrapped up the Skypiea arc of One Piece, and now we introduced the kids to another new anime, an oldie. We started season 1 of Tsubasa, which is one that I have never seen before. So we're I think we're 4 episodes deep in that. So it's really interesting.
Oh, and you didn't start with Card Captor Sakura?
That's on our list, but it's like we've started a bunch of different animes. So we're going through One Piece, we're going through Pokemon, Tsubasa, the anime.hack is on our list. So it's like kid-friendly stuff. But Sakura's on there. We have a lot.
Excellent. Yeah, great selections, everyone, even pangs. So today...
I didn't say I recommended it. I just said I watched.
Fair. Very fair. Guys, this is part of our Disney episode list. Sorry, I got myself screwed over by talking. If you want to see the rest of those episodes, you can see them in the description down below. We just finished the Renaissance era. Not finished as in everything in the Renaissance era, but what we're covering for this part. We'll be doing 3 movies, each in the Pixar, direct-to-video, revival era, and pandemic releases. This, of course, is the first film we're discussing of the direct-to-video era. You can catch, like I said, our playlists and the links down below. Guys, Return of Jafar. I believe the year is 1994. Who would like to explain the plot of this movie? Well, with the very democratic method of holding fingers to noses, Joe has been selected. Joe, tell us the plot.
Jafar comes back, bad things happen, then the heroes win out the day.
Okay, no, not the TJ synopsis. The actual synopsis.
So Jafar's defeated at the end of Aladdin, and we're sometime on, and Aladdin and Jasmine are getting ready to get married, I think, or are they married? I don't.
He's about to get married with her, or they're getting to the point where the Sultan's going to like give his blessing. There we go.
Yeah, and he is essentially fooled into giving over the lamp from Iago. Iago fools him or steals it.
No.
One of the two.
Well, it's found. Iago escapes the lamp, and Abbas Mal finds the lamp, releasing Jafar. But he's bound to still be a genie because of the rules.
Yeah, and then character work and, all of that. And then Genie returns for the year away on vacation. And then
sounding different.
Yeah. So for some reason, he went on vacation and came back with an entirely different voice. It's crazy.
Hate when that happens.
Turns out he's a little too expensive this time around.
It's better than Boy Meet World whenever the little sister just changed.
They just changed it. No word of anything. Just comes back down. Entirely different actors.
Mm-hmm.
And through this, Jafar tries to take back Agrabah, get his revenge, but Iago ends up becoming a bit more heroic here and joins our team, and they are able to stop Jafar once and for all because there were no more sequels of that. There's another sequel out there, but not of this, of Jafar's journey. So, guys, when did you first see this film?
I mean, I was 2 when it came out, so I'm assuming I was quite young.
No, I was a teenager when I first saw it. I refused to watch it for a long time.
No, I'm all about those sequels.
Yeah, same. I have, even from a weird age, like I'm of a particular vintage that I remember when this hit the local video store, and I was always like super into like anti-hero or villain centric sequel stories to major movies. So like this was a layup for me. I saw it like pretty much exactly when it came out.
I saw this whenever the VHS came out, whatever year that was. 94, I think, is when it was actually released. So I was 4. So obviously couldn't remember anything that happened, but I definitely, it was a staple. You know, if we'd watch Aladdin, we would have to watch this. Then was it King of Thieves? It's the third one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So pretty much if we watched one, we had to watch the other 2. So I really enjoy these films. They're a lot of fun. And in fact, pretty good for direct to video sequels. But as we look over this entire film, like, do you guys have a favorite scene or a favorite moment in this movie?
No, I remember this movie, but like I don't remember being fond of this movie.
I liked the winged horses a lot, honestly, because it's like, I don't know, the movie's like centered around like the whole Return of Jafar thing. So like the black horses with wings. Now after reading Harry Potter, kind of reminds me of Thestrals.
Yeah.
It kind of struck a chord because like the whole winged horse fantasy-esque thing was like a big thing in my house anyway. So not really being a fan of Jafar, it's like not my favorite movie, but that's definitely the scene that stood out to me the most was the chase, the waterfall, and then the dark horses were really cool.
Joe?
Yeah, I'd have to echo that, or the first time that they were trying to show the scale of Jafar, like especially in that whenever they're playing Jafar against Genie, that I just think that really did a great job of trying to show like the scale and menace of the character.
You'd be surprised what you can live through. Such a killer line is repeated multiple times in this movie. I rewatched it earlier today. So yeah, that's a solid choice. Since you guys picked that, I'll go ahead with like the final confrontation with Jafar. I do always love the build up of the villain, but I also love the villain getting their comeuppance, and Jafar definitely gets what he deserves at the end of this film, where he actually does die. I'm pretty sure, if I recall correctly. I should know. I just watched the movie. With that in mind, does anyone have, after we talk about our favorite scene or moment, does anyone have a favorite character from the film?
I mean, my favorite character will always be Abu.
Not really given too much to do this film, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, he's just great. Forever, yeah. Abu is in my heart.
That's how I feel about the magic carpet. The amount of sass that comes from that carpet is phenomenal.
Oh, yeah. Barbara?
Carpet. Nope. Carpet's always my favorite.
Solid choice. For this one, I'm actually going to go rewatching it earlier today. I really appreciate the arc that Iago goes on in this film. And he's the classic, bird working for the master, parrot, parroting things back at people, making fun of them. The way he treats the Sultan in the first film after being treated horribly, it comes back to bite him. But now in this film, he's escaped, and he's really kind of escaped his abuser, if you want to talk about that. And,
no, he just chose the safe side. That's all.
But that's part of the arc, is like going from allegiance to allegiance and realizing, oh, that's a terrible way of living my life. I need to stick by people, even if it comes at a cost. Even he almost dies at the end of this film. So really, at the end of the day, you could argue that this is his movie.
That's so fascinating, because I have an entirely different read on Iago.
Ooh.
That Iago is an unapologetic example of just playing the winning side, just self-preservation, 1000%. Like it's not. There's no substantive character arc other than the fact that you've got a master manipulator that's pulling the strings and looking out for his own self-interest, and he never pretends like he's not. That's the beautiful part.
Oh yeah.
He doesn't give any pretense that he's in it for anybody other than himself, unless he needs to say something to the right person in order to save his own skin.
I agree. That's where he stays at for most of the film until the very end, when he rebels against Jafar, knowing there might not be a chance for everyone else to win, and he could be severely punished.
I mean, the entire time, Jafar, and this is actually part of what I appreciate about the movie, is Jafar is a menace this entire time. He's never not a menace in this movie. And so, like, Iago's staring down the barrel of going back to this, like, tyrannical dude that's just like, so, like, to me, I read it differently from, like, it's not like he had a virtuous moment. He's just like, I'd rather lose than win by going back to him, sort of thing.
Okay. Imagine that. Out of the two of us, you're the one who's more cynical, Joe.
Me? Cynical? No.
Never. Not once.
It was also fun. I remember when Jafar, didn't he turn into Jasmine and like try to trick Aladdin? That's kind of, cross-dressing. Well, beyond cross-dressing if you think about it. Fun stuff.
So
I'm sure the shippers had their fun with that.
Can I take us in just an oddball quick aside? I don't know who here has ever watched the Once Upon a Time TV show or the spin-off Once Upon a Time in Wonderland. Well, for those of you that don't know, the main antagonist of the show is Jafar. And I thought it was amazing because honestly, I felt like the actor watched this movie and was like, okay, this is exactly how I'm going to play my Jafar. But the way that there's this flamboyance that he brings to the character that I also read into Jafar in the cartoon, that like you bring that up, but I'm like, I don't know, man. Like there's just a little bit of sass on the end of his words that I just don't think was there by mistake. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. I do remember Wonderland. It was primary for Wonderland, right? As an antagonist?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I do remember a little bit of that. I could see how someone would interpret that in the film. I mean, clearly in the first film, he's got the hots for Jasmine, but I mean,
well, he mainly
knows
had
which
the
way he
heart
swings
for
this time around.
Sultan. You know what I mean? I think Jasmine was just a tool for him to become Sultan. He couldn't care about her. But
okay, so at least I'm not the only one that's watching these movies from a cynical mindset. At least I'm not alone. So
I did wake up and choose violence today, though. So
sometimes you just got to wake up and choose violence. It's just a thing.
That's what you got to do.
Yep. And that's why we all work so well together.
Mm-hmm.
Because I had a terrible day as well. Chose to love as I'm commanded to love.
All right. Way to be fake, Christian.
Because I'm the better Christian.
Somebody's got to do something with that on the final broadcast.
Joshua, feel free to chime in against me in any way, shape, or form. So there's that. Okay, we've questioned Jafar's sexuality. We've talked about our favorite characters. We've talked about how I'm a better Christian than everyone else. That's an objective fact. Like, how about we just go into the animation? The nerd that rules over this podcast. It's like his big thing, and I want to be loving towards him. Like, guys, what do you think is like the best example of this film's animation?
Honestly, I really appreciated that his lamp was black like his soul. Mm-hmm. I just thought that was a nice touch. But go ahead, Joe.
I think I think that same principle goes to the entire movie. There's so many moments in this where there's just like attention to detail that I just, especially for a direct to video sequel from the 90s, you don't necessarily expect that level of attention to detail is going to be there. Like for me, that really stood out in the backdrops, where they would have these different scenes where the sky would be a different color, or there would be nuance to the backdrop because of the big bombastic scenes that were going on and things like that, that just, I don't know, felt like even for a 90s animated direct-to-video sequel, really did a good job of establishing a world that kids could get into,
Yeah.
And they did have like half the budget with this one, so I think that attributes to why this was so memorable. But to me, it was just kind of almost like it's called The Return of Jafar, but I didn't really enjoy him as a character the first one, which is why I didn't enjoy the second movie, because it's just a preference. So if you're not really a fan of Jafar, you're not going to be a fan of this movie. Now, third one, remember vividly, because me with my daddy issues.
No.
But I remember that one.
Kasim and Pang. Oof. Yeah.
I did enjoy the third one, but I know we're talking about the second one now. But really, what's kind of fun is like with how they did it, you don't need to watch the second one to enjoy the third one. It was just like two different spin-offs, which I appreciated.
Fair. I think that's really fair.
Nope, it's still bad.
So, your favorite bit of animation for the movie?
It goes back to definitely the scene with the horses, just because I like the if a movie can animate running water well, I think it's definitely a good movie, because it's like there are some movies that cheap out on just the animation flow when it comes to like rivers or oceans or anything like that. But I definitely think that when Aladdin's falling into the water, it's realistic enough that you can see he's swimming and not just there. That's like a really big thing of mine. Definitely with video games as well, like animation for water.
Yeah.
If you'd like to support our show on Captivate, feel free to go to captivate.fm and find our show, subscribe. You'll get access to any future online D&D campaigns over there. You'll get an extra bonus question for 4 to 8 times a month. You'll get extra content like that through there. You also get a one-time donation you could make to help support the show right on Captivate. So you don't get anything for the one-time donation, but if you would like to just support the show once, do a quick donation, you can do that through captivate.fm. Our overhead includes editing software, marketing, equipment, recording software, and a whole lot of other stuff. And we really appreciate everybody who can help keep the lights on.
Yeah, that's one of those, you can tell when people cheap out on water and how it affects like people's motion or the motion of the water itself.
Mm-hmm.
In honor of our more animation frenzied host, I was paying more attention this time around for his sake. Long may he reign. And as I was watching it, there's a noticeable downgrade from Aladdin, and not like necessarily that's bad. It's you got to realize what you're working with here. You're not working with the A team that was on the original film, but there's plenty of competent artists and direction going on here that makes this a very not a very vibrant film, but way more vibrant than I expected.
But the music though was boo. I can't even tell you any sing-alongs.
We'll get to that because I forgot that there was music in this film. So I'll ask that question after I finish this part. But my scene is going to be the wishes that Abismal originally gets and how he's transported underwater to the ship, and the pain and frustration on his face, and like the way Jafar just clearly just hates him is just shown well through just looking at their faces. And you see the gorgeous treasure and all that as well, and undersea, all that mess. I think that was really well done. But since Pang brought it up, what did you guys think of the music in this film? Is there a song that's spoke out to you? Do you not like anything?
Memorable.
I'm gonna have to agree. I remember like the melodies of some things, but I don't remember a single word to any of the songs.
And as someone who listens to Disney a lot on Spotify,
oh yeah, me too.
None of their songs popped up.
Ooh.
Ever. And I always do like the rotating Disney hits, Disney classic, everything.
Yeah, I don't listen to Disney, but I can tell you that I do not remember a single song from this. Especially if you're like, I don't think it's possible to try and really divorce this one from like this specific category from the movie that came before it. Like, largely it doesn't try to be just a ripoff of Aladdin, so the story kind of gets away with a lot more. But like with the music being what it is in the first movie and it being so important to the overall movie, this one having subpar just sticks out like a sore thumb.
Yeah, it's definitely noticeable, especially for someone who rewatched it earlier today, that I had not thought to include, hey, what was your favorite song of this movie in the outline when I originally sent it out, because I didn't remember there being music in here. And there are some songs, there's like a reprise of Arabian Nights in a far more subpar fashion. There's Iago gets 2 songs. Jafar sings at one point in time. as well.
Yeah,
There's
doesn't
not really
he have
one that, like,
isn't that in the scene where he's pitted against Genie, and that's where he kind of gets his big villain song.
I mean, yeah, that kind of intended that. Like, the animation for that is really well done. The song is kind of lackluster in comparison, because the clear conflict between the two, there's obviously one who's better at this point in time, and it's clearly Jafar, and that's done extremely well to make him a very oppressive villain. But some of the lyrics just weren't up to Disney's regular stuff, is what I'll say. Okay, so obviously this movie is called The Return of Jafar, meaning a villain has returned from the previous film. And as you know, in popular culture over different media, you know, villains coming back is like a staple of sequels across pretty much every medium we have. So for you guys, do you think that Jafar lived up to the hype coming back again to this film?
Negative. Bad guy
Okay.
came, bad guy got defeated. And that's pretty much the whole plot of the movie.
Okay. But once
But
again,
I
you didn't
think
care for
that
him in the
there's
original either.
room-
Correct.
I think there's room though for bad guy came, bad guy got defeated to not be a negative reflection on the actual character. I think ultimately it comes down to I think you hit this one directly on the head a couple of questions ago when you said if you walk into this as a fan of Jafar, you're gonna love this movie. If you walk into this not a fan of Jafar, this is not going to be on the top of your list. I think looking at the quality of him as a villain and a returning character also kind of lives and dies on whether or not you appreciate him as a character. But as somebody who really, part of the reason why I only kind of sit on the periphery of being a fan of Disney movies is because so much of this happens where just, oh, we need to make more money, let's pull these characters back out of the box. I think this is one of the few examples where you get largely another adventure with the entirety of the original cast, that it's done well because it doesn't just try to be a rehash of the first one.
Mm-hmm.
I do
Barbara?
appreciate it's not completely just ripping off the first one, but still boo. Go ahead.
One side of the fence or another, whether you like this movie because you're just a fan of Jafar. Because it's not necessarily my cup of tea. Aladdin was always like my sister's favorite movie, not mine. But I do appreciate the fact that when he came back as a character, he's still a villain, of course. But he's a villain that recognizes his weaknesses per se in this new form. So it's like, you know, he's got the whole I can't kill things because I'm a genie. I've got to abide by the rules because I'm a genie. And so he does find a stooge to do stuff for him. But granted, I think he probably could have found somebody a little smarter. But at the same time, I do kind of appreciate that he's not just trying something over and over again, expecting a different result each time. That he does recognize that, you know, oh, this plan may not work. Let's adapt. Even though in the end he still does die. I mean, I kind of appreciate that. He's an adaptive villain. Not the best villain, but still an adaptive one.
He's also still an immensely prideful villain, and that, hey,
True.
Aladdin should have died in this movie. But he specifically saved him just to rub it in even more. Just to let him know, hey, I'm getting back at you, and I'm going to make you suffer. Which, if you're reading your villain's handbook, is not what you do. You just shoot him. You just, yeah, it's the Dr. Evil. Why don't you just shoot him? You know, just do it. You don't need to set things up. And yeah, he suffers a little bit of that, in my opinion, as far as being a good villain. But I mean, my one of my standards, I was trying to think of like who was actually a good villain who showed up in a sequel. One of mine would be Darth Vader. Like, we see him in, you know, A New Hope, then Empire Strikes Back. The menace is still there. He hasn't lost it in between films. He's learned, he's adapted as well, and used his knowledge of what he has to go seek further knowledge about who he's dealing with. Who is this hotshot pilot who blew up the Death Star? Well, turns out he's actually my kid. So I'm going to wheel and deal until I get my way to have our confrontation there. That's a great sequel, using a villain from the first film without that villain losing their potency, in my opinion. Then we have Jafar here, and he loses some of the potency in how he handles not learning his lesson from the past film. You got too boastful. He got too prideful for his own good. And that's what allowed him to be, messed with by Aladdin, because he also spared him there too, thinking he had just sent him off. But of course, Genie brought him back because Genie is the best. Then we have this film where he doesn't learn from that. So, but as far as being an on-screen menace, yes, the song we don't really like that much is still effective as far as characterization goes, as far as lines like that line said earlier of, you'd be surprised what you can live through. That is a menacing line for a film that's not going to say die. That means we can do terrible things to you, but you're still going to be okay. It's the very Job scenario. It's like, well, very, very bad things are going to happen to you, but you're going to live. Being done by Satan, of course, there, but Jafar here. So anything else you guys want to add for that?
Jasmine and Aladdin still doesn't get married this movie, in case you guys are wondering. It's very sad.
Wow.
See, I'm going to throw in romance somewhere.
Riveting.
Shocker. I have to keep on brand.
There you go. So kind of brought it up earlier, but what do we think about Iago's redemption arc? Or would you argue there is no redemption arc in your very cynical, terrible minds we use?
I mean, I feel like I've said my stance, but once again, unfair because I could care less about Jafar. Now, if it was all about Genie and his past, about his different masters and stuff like that, all up on it. Like, give me some of that. I want to know what you did that year, Genie. I just want to follow you around. I'm a fan.
Well, where were you for the 1993 focus group
They
before
didn't
this
call
movie?
me.
You
I
were
was
1
too
year
young.
old.
I was too young. I couldn't be on payroll yet.
You're telling me you weren't talking yet? You weren't opinionated?
No, I was 100% talking and had great ideas. I just legally could not work for Disney.
Somehow I don't think they'd care about child labor. Joe or Barbara?
I think, like Pang, I said a lot of my stance on this earlier. I honestly think it's one of the strengths of both characters that they are unapologetically them the entirety of the time, good and bad, for both Jafar and Iago. And that's exactly why I don't read any kind of forced in, shoehorned, non-existent character arc for him. He's looking out for his own best interest the entire time.
Okay. Barbara, we've heard two subpar opinions. Salvage us, please.
I somewhat agree. But in the end, I do feel like he has redeemed himself by a hair. Where it's throughout the entire movie, you see him, he's selfish, he's doing himself, he's, he wants to survive, he wants to live. But then at the same time, I feel like you do see. No. It's not a dig at John. I do it to a lot of things. But it's I don't know. I always see things from both sides of the coin, kind of.
Okay. Well, Barbara, I was grading you as you were speaking. It was going to be a B-, but you slammed John, so now it's an A+. The other two, I need to see you in my office after class. We need to discuss some things.
That's weird.
Because he knows through an arc.
That gave me
go
the
ahead,
ick.
Joe.
What you just said gave Joe and I the ick. I can see it in his face.
Oh yeah, 100% gave the ick.
I can't believe
because
I'm
he
agreeing
does.
with Joe.
Because right, yeah. Because he does. Because he's an opportunist. I'm not going to ever argue against that. He sees the way things are going and he'll move. But what really makes me think at the end of this film, he is more on the side of good, is he recognizes what Aladdin did for him in stepping up for someone who didn't deserve it one bit. Now, some of that is based on the false premise that Aladdin thinks Iago actually saved him, but Iago knows he didn't, and yet Aladdin thinks he's better than what he is, and that gives him pause because he's not a good person. He's an opportunist, and yet someone else is willing to step out and believe in him, and the gears start turning. They're not fully there because he does betray them, but when he stands to gain nothing, he frees them knowing they're the better alternative to a Jafar who is in control of Agrabah. And he even almost gets a heroic sacrifice in the end. I'm glad he didn't die because I think it would have been too early for such a thing. So that's my point of view. Listeners, what do you think? Who's right here?
Me.
How did I leave you geeks with all of these bad opinions? Just running around here flagrantly giving themselves like just all of these bad opinions. Christian, we have to talk. You
Yeah,
are
yeah.
sweet summer child. You are. I do not see how you completely miss the key core component of what you're saying. Like, oh yeah, it's all sunshine and rainbows, other than the fact that you're missing the entire time they're playing them straight. Like they're just straight down the middle of like, I yeah, I'm gonna gamble that at the end of the day, I'm gonna go with these guys over here because they're the ones that are going to lead to me most likely getting out of this alive and things like that, rather than like the virtues of being a good person.
But I don't think he does that without Aladdin stepping up for him earlier in the film. He doesn't make that play because he saw someone else believing in him for the first time, knowing he's not the person that person thinks he is.
I'm
But I
just
see we're
saying,
getting.
Josh taught people how to be wrong at a professional level. That's just how that happened.
Well, thank God he's not on here because I'm sure that'd be a way worse opinion. All right. So obviously, this is the first of the direct-to-video series we're doing, and Disney did this a lot in the '90s and the early 2000s. Of hey, we had a hit movie here, we're going to throw a sequel to the masses because we're just going to make a cash grab. But do we think that these direct-to-DVD, direct-to-video movies, sequels are a bane of the industry, or were they follow-ups to the original films?
I mean, as long as people got paid, I think it's fine. I mean, that's the whole goal of a movie.
Paying a shill
They
for
did
Disney
what they
does
wanted
not
to
care.
do. I don't care. Disney makes a good movie. They get paid for it. If you hate it, just don't watch it. Don't be mad at them.
Go ahead, Barbara. Okay, Joe.
Yeah, I'm well versed in the straight to video world with being a fan of horror. Like so many franchises have dipped into straight to video sequels. I'm like Barbara. You know, if the story's there and the animation looks good, fine. It's not. I think your mileage is going to vary on the quality of the movies that are coming out straight to video. But other than that, you know.
Yeah, I'd say for the most part, I don't mind them. When there's actual care behind them, you get something like, this movie. You get something like the third movie. You also get Lion King 1.5, which is, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead for our Hamlet Lion King movie. They're fun. They're not the best things in the world. I'm not going to take a bullet for any of them, but I got entertainment value out of them. I would, if someone said, hey, we're going to go, even what was the third Cinderella movie? A Twist in Time, the actual good sequel. The second one, I don't remember anything that happens in that one.
Yeah, the Twist in Time was when. But the sequel was just update of Anastasia, and she married a baker. How could you not like that? She fell in love. It has two of my favorite
romance
things.
Is the only thing I look for in a film.
And love.
Wow. Anything else?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Well, in honor of he with the bad opinions, another part of what we do in our Disney film series is we talk about how they're represented, in the parks or in media in different forms. Obviously, the first movie came out first, so Aladdin and Jasmine were already going to be in Disney parks, have been ever since the original film's release. Jafar has been there as well, especially in the Fantasmic show. He's always been a staple of that. Aladdin and Jasmine has shown up there as well. I just happened to see it a couple of months ago. Still really good, even when it's been updated. Now, for our gamers out there, the plot of this sequel occurs somewhat in Kingdom Hearts 2. Fun levels there for Agrabah and everything that goes on. Then there was also, I learned as I was doing research for this, there was a 2-issue comic series that was based on an alternate take of the events of the movie. They call it The Return of Aladdin, probably because that had more, I don't know, buy-in power or something, where there's some other sorcerer who is in the film and is in the comic, and Jafar is not really there at all. It just sounded weird from the plot synopsis I read. Now, also reportedly, God help us all, a sequel to the live action film revolving around this very same plot is being shopped around at this moment. Now, as someone who cares nothing about Disney live action remakes of their films, this doesn't make me happy, but I'm not going to watch them either way, so they can do whatever they want. They can make as much money as paying wants them to.
I mean, it's not about me, it's about the consumer, honestly.
You guys have anything else you could think of that I missed? Probably not.
Nah.
Okay. Anything you'd like to discuss before we start wrapping things up?
Nah.
Actually, I do have one thing from being back in, like, thinking back during the time when these movies were like in their heyday and all of that. For me, I'm a different. I lived in the local video store as a kid. Like that was my stomping ground. So I was very aware of this movie when it first came out. But I remember the kids meal toys at the time. Like everybody
Ooh.
and their mother knew that this movie was coming out because of that. Like it was a really big deal when this was, because it's Aladdin at that point was one of the most successful movies. And so they were really utilizing those kinds of adjacent markets to promote this movie.
I completely forgot about all those Happy Meals back in the day. They'd run wild with those things.
McDonald's has the vintage cups back. Well, I quote vintage because, they're not really. They just look vintage. In case anyone was curious.
Who's paying you under the table to mention all these companies in a favorable manner?
No one. I just like, letting the people know. I know a lot of stuff. I just want other people to know.
Excellent. Well, guys, thank you for listening. Before we start wrapping up, we're going to mention our bonus question we're going to be doing, which would be, what would be a small or mundane wish that we'd make to a genie that wasn't something major, like I want to be wealthy, I want to be powerful, I want to rule the world? So if you're curious about that, send a little money our way. You'll
Mine's
hear it.
good. Just let you guys know.
Okay.
It's really good.
Something to look forward to. Now, as far as rating and reviewing goes, what are your scores out of 10 for this movie?
I was going to say 4, but I'm feeling generous, so I'm going to say 5.
Okay. Barbara. Okay. Joe.
Let's go a strong 8.5.
Okay. Stronger than mine. Yeah, I was going to say 8. Definitely things I'd have liked more in this film, but I also understand what they were doing. This is their experimental, like, can we do something like this? And I think it worked for them in the end. I just would have liked a tighter script. But that's that. Recommendations for the audience.
Blue Lock Season 2 is coming soon, so if you haven't watched Season 1 yet, get to it. Get ready.
It's about the only thing I've ever cared about soccer is watching a show like that.
So good.
It makes soccer actually look impressive, which is quite the feat.
As someone on the
Knowing
soccer
what
team,
reality is.
you shut your mouth right now because soccer is impressive.
Soccer is one of the only sports that actually requires us to be able to do well that gets regular airtime. So there you go.
Okay.
Phenomenal.
Joe, your recommendation? Nothing?
I would recommend for people who are looking for something that is it's not necessarily nerdy, but it is amazing. The show The Bear. Absolutely go and watch that show, and then once you're done, watch it again because it is amazing.
Okay. I know Will's watched the show and he really enjoyed it. So there's that. Maybe a future episode down the line. For me, I am currently playing through the Marvel Midnight Suns game that released a couple of years ago because it was free the other day, and I'm really enjoying it. And I say that as someone who doesn't like turn-based combat, and the card mechanic system was something I had to get used to, but I got to be Spider-Man beating up on some demons and some Hydra agents. Ton of fun. So, guys, thank you once again for listening to this episode. Please, if you get a chance, leave a 5-star review on your podcasting platform of choice. Just help us with the ratings there. If you want to contact us, you do so at systematicgeekology@gmail.com. As well, since you guys got us to over 100 subscribers on YouTube, we're doing a special Q&A episode way later on where you guys can send us your questions. As many hosts as possible will be on, and we'll answer those questions for you. I'd like to thank our supporters, some of our supporters, Ethan Overcash, Austin Nance, Amber Riley, and Jonathan Augustine. Guys, you're the best. Thank you very much for what you do. But remember, we're all the chosen people, a geekdom of priests.
Do you love systematic ecology as much as I do? Of course you do. So why don't you hop on over to the Systematic Ecology shop and get yourself some merch. We have clothing like hats, extra soft t-shirts, sweaters, hoodies. We even have glassware and mugs. One of my favorite coffee mugs that I use every morning is a coffee mug that has on it, share the faith, share the geek. Yeah, I get my geek on first thing every morning, thinking of systematic geekology. And I know you need to hop over there and get you some merch, represent us out in the wild, out in the public, and let people know that you too like to share the faith and share the geek.
Hi, my name is TJ, and I'm here to tell you about the Anazal Ministry Podcast Network. We have a bunch of shows on AMP. You can follow the entire network in a single feed on Spotify at Anazal Ministry Podcasts or on the network page on Apple Podcasts. Some of the ones we're running right now are The Homily, which is Pastor Will's homily messages from Holy Trinity Lutheran Church in Chapel Hill. We have the Whole Church Podcast, which one of my favorites. It's where myself and Joshua, we interview leaders from different denominations and backgrounds to work for a full church unity, Big C. We have My Seminary Life by Brandon Knight, former host on Systematic Geekology. He discusses his experience at seminary and discusses seminary topics so anyone can access the knowledge, which is kind of cool. It's like the book, everything you learn in business school and then everything you don't learn at business school. That's great. We have Let Nothing Move You by Christian Ashley. He goes through the Bible kind of like it's a Bible study to explain the biblical narrative through his perspective and what he's learned. Dummy for Theology, which is Joshua's show. He discusses various theological topics in an attempt to show every side of big discussions. That leaves you with more questions than answers, which everyone loves a lot. It's kind of a continuation of a series that we did on Whole Church, but it's really good. It's really fun. We have the Bible After Hours, where the foul-mouthed preacher goes through the Bible from a progressive view to challenge the status quo of the modern church. I love that one. If you're from a more conservative background, that one I find will probably be the most helpful for you. Definitely check that out. And we have the Clydes. Taylor and Elizabeth Clyde go through weekly discussions in a devotional, conversational method to help us get closer to one another and God. That's just a little review of what we do in AMP and all of our other shows. So check that out, get subscribed, and just start getting all that free content, you know?